Welcome to The Cool Down, a Bailiwick Express podcast where we meet the people making the sports headlines. Hello, I'm Nick Mann, and in this episode we delve into the world of sprinting with Island star Abi Galpin. A heavily disrupted build-up to last year's Island Games had some hidden consequences through this winter, but she is now back at her best. We geek out over some of the intricacies of 200-metre running, talk about her PB at the UK Indoor Championships, where a fall after the line meant she couldn't compete in the semis, before she reveals her plan for a fresh challenge this summer over a new distance. We begin by talking about the challenges that come after an event as big as the Games.
Yeah, it is really tricky. And I think there definitely is, maybe not all athletes and coaches appreciate it, but trying to race even in the weeks after the Games is really difficult, because I think, you know, your mental state, even if you think, oh no, I'm fine, like you can't bring out the performances again because your body is just so tired emotionally and physically. I think that is really tough. And I think we did a competition, maybe I didn't actually race, but there was a competition at the track maybe a week after the Games on a Thursday night, and I was like, oh yeah, there's no one here, there's no one watching. And you just sort of forget like how amazing the Games was, and then like a week later it was sort of back to sort of a very low-key meet and the crowd was gone, and you just sort of appreciate how amazing it was at the Games, for everyone to come and support. But it also was like a tough reality coming back to that. And I think then obviously it's tricky to then rebuild and try and compete afterwards, but I did do a few races and they actually went all right. But then it's sort of trying to settle back in for the winter and effectively refocus on new goals, looking for the next year. But it's been a bit of an interesting winter for me so far with that, because some people know that I spent most of the year before the Games completely injured. I think maybe about the 6 months before the Games, I probably spent 4 months with no running at all, and then 2 months sort of on and off, and then building into the Games. So it was a bit of a miracle that I was in the shape I was, which definitely credit to my coach Tom for somehow getting a training program together that sort of got me in good enough shape. But at the start of the summer, off the back of the Games, I was really struggling actually to we did sessions that I've done in previous years, and we know that I can build really well off, and the times were just not great. I was really struggling to like put sessions together and, you know, see those improvements. And we think that, you know, potentially it's because taking shortcuts effectively to get into race fitness for the Games, my body very much did not have the foundations to go into a winter training, which again is something that's, you know, quite interesting. I think, you know, as an athlete, and maybe even most coaches don't appreciate that actually having that time off, you can, you know, force yourself to have a big competition, a big race, but actually then coming back for the winter, the long-term training just wasn't in the bank. So I've been struggling a little bit with that, but I've been building up again, and it seems to be coming back again now, so it's all good.
Yeah, because I guess it's going to be difficult to cope with not being at the level or seeing the times that you would expect to see, especially when we're in an autumn winter period where it's not the most sort of energetic time to be there as well. But so you started to see some progress. Mm-hmm. When did it start clicking, I guess, in terms of the winter training? Yeah,
I think I actually started racing at the very end of December, like literally around New Year. And the times, and my 200 was actually all right, but my 60 was pretty slow for me. I think people that see that time would recognise that was quite slow for me. And I think that was definitely signs that my speed was missing. But luckily I seem to have raced myself into fitness, and we always say that racing is the best form of training that you can do. And so I think going into Suddens 2 weeks ago, I was sort of just like, oh well, I'll just see what happens. I don't think I'm in particularly good shape or anything, but we'll just see. And I actually ended up running 24.5 from lane 2, which is like, I was like, oh, that's a pretty serious time actually. I was like, that, you know, equivalent to outdoors, we were sort of saying that's probably actually PB shape. And so then it was Suddens. I decided actually I definitely will go British Champs, because I wasn't sure if I was going to. But with that time, I was like, oh, give me a better lane and I will go faster. Just give me a good lane. So I was pretty determined, and I think the deadline to submit that your confirmation that you were going to attend was that night, and I was like, okay, better go say I'm coming. But yeah, I think to be fair, it clicked sort of January time. I spent I was putting the training in all winter. It just wasn't showing the signs that it was working until, quite last minute. But luckily, it's all worked out.
And you give us a bit of a sense of, racing indoors is a very, very different experience to being outdoors. So can you just take us through the different challenges that?
Yeah, so there's no 100 metres, so you're going for a 60-metre run, which is basically just a start. If you say it's so short and sharp, if you mess sort of any section up, you're not getting a good time. And then the round track is 200 metres, so some people call it the short track. And so 200 metres is a whole lap of the track, which is banked at the curves. So you're getting 2 bends, which is slower than an outdoor track because bends slow down, having to change direction, and also the bends are so much tighter. So us sprinters are very particular about our lanes. We're particular about lanes outdoors, let alone indoors. So it's quite well known that the inner lanes are quite a bit slower. World Athletics have recently put out a thing saying if you're seeding an event, you should make sure that your top seeds go through. So they're basically giving people like British champs an excuse to give the top seeds good lanes, which in a heat normally it's meant to be completely random. So that's quite interesting. And then also in America recently they've started doing finals. They normally use lanes 1 to 6. They're still taking 6 people through to the final, but they're doing an A and a B final, so you only use lanes 4, 5 and 6 because they know that the number of people that probably don't start if they get drawn lane 1, they're just like, there's no point running. So then starting to use lanes 4, 5 and 6 because that's what the athletes prefer and will run faster times from is really interesting. But I guess this is quite an in-depth sort of background into indoor 200 metre running because I think a lot of people maybe don't appreciate how different it is. But yeah, definitely lane 5 or 6 is the lane to be.
I remember talking to people about indoors as well, like in terms of just the atmosphere and how dry it is and all this kind of different factors that come in.
Yeah, I think definitely the air does seem a lot drier. I wouldn't like to do an endurance race indoors. That'd be pretty horrible. The great thing about sort of an indoor arena is because it's so enclosed, you don't need that big a crowd to have it echoing off the walls and things like that. So I think it's definitely got a buzz around it more than an outdoor track. And then obviously, outdoor athletics can quite often be hampered by the weather, or you're complaining about the wind, or it's cold, or it's raining. Whereas indoors, you've got absolutely none of that to worry about, which I do love. You don't need to worry about the conditions indoors, which is always huge in sprint. Every time you race indoors, you've got a chance to get a PB. Whereas when you're running outdoors, you're thinking, oh, the weather's not right today. It's not going to happen. And things like that. So that's always quite a nice thing to be going into about indoors.
So this weekend, you're at the British Champs. Like, what was the main target? What was your thought process going into it?
Yeah, so I knew the standard was going to be tough this year. There are a few entrants that didn't have season's bests, which is what they rank all the heats off from. So that was interesting because there were people down that were going to run rapid times. They just haven't run yet this year. But I wanted to make the semi-final, and luckily I did, although I didn't get to run in it. And I definitely just wanted to go and run a PB because I knew, if I PB'd from lane 2 only 2 weeks earlier, then give me any lane that's better than that. I knew I was going to run faster. And I also I wanted to get back out on sort of a bigger stage. Obviously the Island Games is an international stage, it's huge, but the level of competition at British Champs is effectively higher, so I just wanted to get back out there and sort of reintroduce that after obviously having basically a year off of big competitions from injury the year before. I wanted to get back out there and get used to that stage again, and it was amazing. It was really good.
And you had that lane draw as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I was ranked second in my heat, although we did get drawn with the girl that won it last year, but unfortunately hadn't run this year yet. So she was ranked as ranked slowest in our heat effectively with no seed, and so she was given lane 3, which is the worst lane that they drew in our heat. But obviously, I going into it, I'm like, well, she's probably going to win this. So effectively, I was seeded 3rd, but I needed to come 2nd to get the automatic qualifying spot. So it's a bit of a joke that me falling over is actually Tom's fault, because he told me I had to get second. He was like, you got to beat that girl, you got to get second. Even though she ran half a second faster than me at Suddens to take the silver only 2 weeks earlier, I was like, oh, this is going to be tough. But I knew what her race plan looks like. I knew that she normally goes out hard to 150 and then sort of dies at the end. So I just thought, if I can just not let her overtake me too soon and then go back past her again across the finish. That was the plan. I mean, the race was executed perfectly to plan, except just after the finish line was not to the plan. But yeah, really happy to have beaten her and sort of taken that win when, you know, she was ranked above me. And then obviously it meant sorry, I didn't really explain. Coming second meant that I would get a better lane draw in the semi than if I'd come third and got through as a fastest qualifier. So yeah, I needed that lane. I needed to get that second place if I wanted to run a good time in the semi with a better lane, which is why it was so important. So yeah, lots of intricacies that people might not appreciate behind 200 metre running.
and it's, oh God, I guess you've got to have so much patience in that race scenario as well. When you see a faster athlete going past you initially, the person that you're really focused on comes past you as well, and you're then planning to come back at them. Yeah. Actually, like, mentally that's got to be quite interesting, and it's all happening at such a pace.
Yeah, it is. I mean, the race plan was initially get out as hard as you can, as always, and then with Birmingham it's meant to be a better track than most of the tracks in the UK. So my plan was kind of basically to go flat out the whole way and just hope for the best. But I also knew that I had to put an extra kick coming off the bend to get past the girl in lane 5 again. So I was expecting her to come past me probably just the start of the bend. I thought that's probably when she'll come past me, because in Suddens she ran an absolutely outrageous time to 150. So I thought, if she's going to run that again, she'll be past me, like, basically at the start of the bend. And I was running down the back straight and I was like, I can't hear her yet. I can't feel her, because even that you sort of have a sense that they're behind you. And it was only about, I was coming up the hill at the bend and I was like, she's not here yet. This is good. This is very good. And then, like, as I thought that, then she did come up on my shoulder and I was like, no, I can make this. I can do this. And then sort of, yeah, coming down the bend, I was giving it absolutely everything. My legs were struggling at that point. But I was like, no, I need to get there. I can get there. She's slowing down. I'm going faster than her, but I think she had about 1 metre on me, maybe 30 metres to go. And then we would level it about 10 metres to go. I was like, right, I'm going to make sure I get there. And then, yeah, obviously, push myself a little bit hard.
What happened over the line? The legs just give way, was it? Like,
yeah, I mean, the last few steps, I sort of, all of a sudden I couldn't really feel my legs. They sort of like kind of felt like they seized up. Although watching it back, it doesn't really look like that, but that's at least how it felt to me. And I sort of knew I was falling as it happened. I knew what was happening, and I was like, oh dear. But yeah, I think also because the shape of the Birmingham track, the finish line is basically where the hill starts to slope back up again at the start of the bend. And so I think potentially just starting to go uphill as I fell. So the ground was closer to me than I thought it would be, which I think is partly another reason why I fell, but I think I was probably going to fall over anyway at that point. But yeah, I'm okay. A few scrapes. But unfortunately, yeah, the medical guy at the track was like, no, you've hit your head. You can't run again, because you've got to treat it as mild concussion. So in hindsight, I think he probably was right, even though the adrenaline in me was like, I'm fine, I'm ready to go. But no, it's probably a good decision.
I mean, because it was only an hour later, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So, like, yeah.
I mean, it was a bit controversial, really, that the 200 metres, between heat 1 and semi-final 1, there was only an hour and a half. And I was a bit upset when I got drawn at heat 5, because it was, over 25, it was 25 minutes later than heat 1 and 25 minutes less recovery. I mean, that's like nearly 50% less recovery than the people are getting in heat 1. And I was like, well, that's a little bit annoying. And then I got drawn in semi-final 1, of course. So I would have had an hour recovery, which is a bit brutal for 200 metres. But it would have been interesting to see how I'd cope with that. But yeah, no, I guess we'll never know.
And so that draws a close to the indoor season for you. What happens now?
So now, sort of building to the outdoor season, me and my coach have been talking about moving up to the 400 a little bit. A bit apprehensive about that. We actually spoke about it properly sort of on the weekend. We were like, right, what are we doing now? Because, up until then it was just get indoors out of the way, see what's happening. And then then all of a sudden it was like, what are we doing outdoors? So I'm definitely still focusing on the 200, I'd say, but I think there's more opportunities in the 400. You know, sort of there are events that England team sends relays to, and the 4x4 is an opportunity for that. And you know, I've never really tested myself over the 400, so as me and Tom were talking about, I guess there's more opportunity there. Because I'm definitely more of a 200 metre runner than a 100 metre runner at this point, so it's sort of natural that, you know, I ran a pretty good 400 metre time off, you know, no 400 metre training 2 years ago now, so we're sort of like, well, if I actually train for it properly, then, you know, we don't really know what sort of times I can run, so it'll be interesting to sort of move up and see how that goes, but at the same time, quite apprehensive to do 400 metre training. It's not enjoyable. Lactic it's not fun compared to just getting to do speed sessions, but you know, I think it's something that maybe I'll be better suited to in the long term, so it's definitely something I'm looking to. I think we said yesterday that if I start doing the 400 early in the season, just to sort of see how it goes, just get myself used to it, because I've always had a bit of a mental block doing the 400 because it's quite an intimidating event, but and then move back down and do more speed work during the season, and then maybe ending in 100, so 200 in the middle, and then sort of doing a 100 at the end, just to see what I can do, because it's tricky. I want to move up to the 4. I think I'm capable of doing quite well in it, but at the same time I feel there's unfinished business with the 100, so I want to go faster first in the 100 as well, so I want to get better at everything first.
Just the 1, the 2, 4.
Yeah.
Back in the long jump pit, or is that like?
I mean, I would love to go the 6 meters in the long jump, but at the same time, I don't think my hamstrings would like me for that. So I'm not going to be risking any more long jump, unfortunately.
I guess like as you look at the longevity of your career as well and staying involved in athletics, stepping up to 400, it's a fresh challenge. It's a new, basically it's a new event to look at and make sure things don't get stale as well.
Yeah, I think it's definitely something to grow into as well. I think the reason I've always been scared of doing the 400 is because when I was younger, I was very much a short sprinter. You know, the 60 metres and the 100 metres, even the 200 was too far for me when I was younger. It really was. And then, you know, we'd build into 300s at training, and those would just be awful. Just felt way too far for me. And then I remember the first 400 I did was in 2019 because they wanted me in the Gibraltar 4x4, and oh god, 400. It was so far, and it just felt awful. And so it's definitely something you have to grow into, and I think I'm a lot stronger now. You know, my body can sort of take the volume and take the training sessions for it. So it is just a matter of sort of accepting that is the way to go. And it definitely doesn't, you know, changing it with training can have, you know, really good effects in the 200 as well. There's a girl who, she's actually ran at the Commonwealths in the 200 as well, the Welsh girl, Hannah Breyer. She recently moved up sort of last year, but is fully committed to it this year. And she went from running, I think she started running 54 and sort of last year, and I think she went sub 54 once right at the end of the year, and she ran at British Champs. I think she came 5th at the British Champs, but she's just been selected for Great Britain in the World Indoor Championships for the 4x4, which is just incredible. I don't expect to have the same progression as her, because she really is an incredible athlete, but it just shows, you know, she was, you know, talking about moving up, and it was definitely a challenge for her. She wanted a new challenge, and it's really paid off. It's really worked out for her. So I think there's definitely potential, you know, moving up from a 100, 200 runner to 200, 400 runner.
Exciting times, and especially exciting times when you know that you get more consistency in your training now, and the stress of last year must have been immense, like with the injuries, and so must be a great place to be in at this point, coming off the back of a proper indoor season, and away we go.
Yeah, hopefully.
All right, that's great. I appreciate your time. Thanks for coming in.
Yeah, nice.
That was the cool down. Thanks again for listening. Please like and subscribe for more. You can find all our sports news on gsy.bailiwickexpress.com and on all our social channels. Sign up to our daily email to keep up to date on all the work the Express team does.